What has the nature of conspiracy taught us over the years regarding the events of September 11, 2001? It has taught us that if you repeat a lie often enough, people will start believing it. That was from Reich Minister Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, of the Nazi Party. And he's right. 19 years later, we still have many in the truth and debunker movements regurgitating certain narratives and conspiracies. Now, debunkers aren't nefarious for their tall tales regarding the more outlandish conspiracies surrounding this event. Basically, we have a large percentage of the truth movement who basically regurgitate what they heard from their leading experts. And in this video, I'd like to go over some of these people who have, for the last 19 years, led many, I would say, even millions down the road where there is a dead end. If we go back to the year 2001, 2002, just months after the September 11th attacks, Thierry Meyssan, a French author, wrote a book called Le Pentgate, in which he began the very first conspiracy theory regarding the nature of the Pentagon attack, suggesting that no plane had impacted the building. And he showed this photograph of the second floor. On the first floor, there was white foam coming out of the fire truck from Arlington County, who responded to the fire, to the incident, trying to put the fire out on the first floor, and you couldn't see the whole first floor. It was covered by the white foam. And so Meyssan, whether he knew it or not, it comes out later that he purportedly made this up so he could show that the stupidity of the American people can be profited off of. And sure enough, he did, because some people are still purporting this outrageous theory. And of course, the godfather of conspiracies, Alex Jones, James Fetzer, Ace Baker, Morgan Reynolds, and John Lear, who purport that there were no hijackers, no planes, no phone calls that couldn't be made at those altitudes. And so almost immediately, just months after the attacks, we start seeing these purveyors of fanatical tales starting to weave their conspiracies, almost on timing, because right about this time, there is an actual truth movement, but they never saw themselves as a truth movement. They were called the Jersey Widows, who forced the U.S. government, backed by the popular demand of the people, to have a government inquiry. In fact, there weren't just one, but there were two. We have the 9/11 Commission and the Joint House Inquiry Report into the intelligence apparatuses of the September 11th attacks, with the 9/11 Commission being the more broader inquiry itself. So after the Joint Inquiry finished in 2003 and 9/11 Commission in 2004, they publicly made available their reports. The Joint Inquiry, however, part of it was redacted. It's called the 28 pages, more infamously. And 9/11 Commission basically didn't investigate much of the issue. In fact, they did go over millions of files and documents, but there were millions of files and documents they didn't even cover. In fact, in some instances, it was ignored altogether, forcibly, by the man hanging over their shoulder and director of the 9/11 Commission, Bush lackey Philip Zelikow, who is personal friends with National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, who actually was the only State Department employee to testify at the 9/11 Commission, basically perjure herself. Nonetheless, after the commission report came out, the joint inquiry report came out, we start seeing some new conspiracy theorists. David Ray Griffin, a theologian, Christian theologian, who should have stood purporting his faith. Instead, he dove headfirst into 9/11 and basically kept repeating the narrative that phone calls couldn't be made at those altitudes, even though most phone calls were made from airphone, even though cell phone calls could be made at such altitudes because cell phone receptors were stronger back then than they are now. Not to mention, on Boeing planes, there are radio transmitters that do help with the transmission rates of cell phones. There are articles in which I'll post at the bottom of this video that shows that cell phone works, even going back to a San Francisco Gate article in 1999, where they interview flight attendants who basically see teenagers in the toilets, in the seats, talking when they shouldn't be talking on the phone. That's the reason why they tell you not to use the phone, because it basically interferes with radio transmissions of the pilots themselves. If there was no interference, they wouldn't tell you to turn off the phones. Nevertheless, that didn't stop David Ray Griffin and Christopher Bollyn of American Free Press to start purporting that these conspiracy theories do hold merit. And Christopher Bollyn, who is a raging anti-Semite, who does a great disservice to people who actually want to show that there was Israeli foreknowledge, but Bollyn doesn't just imply that Israel has foreknowledge. No, to him, Israel is primarily the architects, the planners. They have foreknowledge of the 9/11 attacks, and everybody else is the patsies. Now, Bollyn, I think, does this on purpose so that he can actually disregard the more reputable truth researchers, 9/11 truth researchers, who want to show that, yes, there was Israeli foreknowledge and maybe even complicity, but we don't have evidence of complicity yet. And so we're stuck with foreknowledge for now. However, with people like Bollyn and then later on, Rebecca Roth, who basically implies that Gillette and B are the Israeli art students. No, the real Israeli art students was a bigger ring. Well over 200 people were involved with that, and they were basically selling cheap art to people of the intelligence apparatuses and also to congressional leaders of these districts in these states. And they would be set by teams of 3. It would be a woman and 2 men, and usually women were young so that they could basically get the attention of the people at the door. Basically, they were men, DEA, FBI, State Department, all of that. In fact, what they were doing was putting listening devices in these art pieces of art so that they could listen into whatever of these important officials' homes and agents. And so this ring was busted. It was basically reported by the New York Times and CNN, The Atlantic made big reports, and then it just died on the vine. But no, that didn't stop Bollyn from saying that nobody got on these planes. And in fact, World Trade Center 6, because it was a building that had the roof that had circular damage to it, basically said a missile had hit it. So what these people do is that they muddy the waters in the hopes that they can make a quick dime, that they could gain a following, or something more nefarious, that they're trying to lead people of the truth movement down a dead end. And then when the public sees them repeating these ridiculous narratives of no planes, no hijackers, and no cell phones, who basically, now you can't blame anybody for 9/11, the public's reaction is, oh, you see, the 9/11 truth movement, a bunch of kooks, a bunch of quacks, and all the other diatribe and insulting names that you have earned over the years through your ignorance, and sometimes even through your arrogance of your ignorance. You're proud to tell people. You post it on Facebook and Twitter, every other form of viral media, memes mostly, because you don't know anything about 9/11. You just basically know very little because you follow these people and they have limited knowledge themselves. Bollyn and Roth and Alex Jones and Jim Fetzer, they basically have zero knowledge about 9/11. They don't know anything about the geopolitics. They couldn't tell you. I mean, Alex Jones basically says that Arabs run Hollywood. Think this guy's not in somebody's pocket somewhere down the road? I'm not saying that he definitely is, but for the one guy that I would think that he is, it would be him. He has such a big following. Millions of people still listen to him, even though he basically came out in court and said he's a fraud. His wife even admits that much is so and proved it in court. The guy is a fraud, flat out fraud. Loose Change, which is the most popular documentary in all of 9/11, unfortunately, is one of the worst films about 9/11. Dylan Avery, Corey Rowe, and Jason Bermas were all involved with that. Bermas actually was producer. He basically had little or nothing to do with the revisions. They did 2 revisions, and they couldn't even get those right. Suggesting that Flight 77 never crashed into the Pentagon, suggesting that Flight 93 crashed into Shanksville. They're basically saying that they landed in Cleveland. If they did their homework, they would notice that no, the FAA has already came out, even Cleveland Dispatch and the I said FAA, Cleveland FAA, they basically have come out and said as such that no, we basically had so much confusion regarding the radar readings that it was Delta 1989 that landed in Cleveland and not Flight 93. And when 2 planes are close to each other, is what the FAA explained, that when there's 2 planes close to each other, the radio frequency regarding FAA towers and the planes often don't connect. And so they couldn't get a reading or a callback from 1989, Flight 1989. And so they automatically assumed Flight 99 was also hijacked. And so when it landed in Cleveland, they assumed because it was near Flight 93, they basically said, oh, Flight 93 landed in Cleveland. No, that wasn't the case. They interviewed people who were on Flight 1989 on CNN and MSNBC. There you go, look for yourselves. In fact, go to my friend Truth or TV Archives. Go look through his playlist. He has it right there. Flight 93 crashed in Shanksville, and that's what the residents saw, Somerset County. Instead, what did Loose Change show you? They said, well, look, just a hole in the ground with very few debris. No, duh. Really? You wouldn't find large pieces of debris, and I already explained in a previous video I did a couple of weeks back about stop comparing plane crashes with these plane crashes on 9/11 because it's disingenuous. Why? Because with other plane crashes that you usually see, the pilots are not trying to crash the plane at high rates of speeds, fully loaded. Most of these pilots dump the fuel and try to land. They break up. You see large pieces of the tail section, large pieces of the fuselage, heck, or whole engines. You didn't see that at the Pentagon in Shanksville because those planes were going over 500 miles an hour, crashing into hard surfaces. In fact, with Flight 93, it nosedived into the ground. And if the creators of Loose Change were actually really interested in the truth, and you know they weren't, they would have explained to you that these planes and planes that you usually see can't be compared. You're not going to find bodies, whole bodies at Shanksville or the Pentagon. They basically exploded into molecules. Inanimate objects basically reduced to nothing. It was a miracle that they even found the clothing. Well, light debris will survive. There's some artifacts like an earphone, an ID card, some paper. It's amazing that the Somerset County coroner, Wally Miller, who did a miraculous job, found human DNA of every single crew member and passenger on the plane. And yet, the conspiracy theorists, the rabid ones, they go hound this poor guy. And now this guy doesn't want to do an interview with nobody. I tried to call him to do an interview for my podcast. He wants nothing to do with 9/11. Because you kooks, you conspiracy theorists who espouse these just insane conspiracies and hound these people, now we can't even talk to some of these people because they want nothing to do with being involved in the discussion anymore because they have been victims of these assaults from these people who make no sense. Now, I'm not blaming the victims of Alex Jones, David Ray Griffin, Loose Change, Christopher Bollyn, Rebecca Roth. When you Google or search for videos, discussions about 9/11, the unfortunate fact is that 95% of the time, even probably higher than that, you are going to find videos and discussions relating to these conspiracy theorists who espouse these ridiculous narratives. People like CIT, Citizens Investigation Team, who are the most repugnant, not even researchers, repugnant duo regarding 9/11. And that's Craig McKee from his Dying Truth and Shadows blog. Came to write an original article. Barbara Honegger. They don't even believe a plane hit the Pentagon. CIT and Craig McKee actually think a plane not only didn't crash at the Pentagon, but actually flew over the Pentagon. Okay? But a bomb exploded at the same time the plane flew over the Pentagon, making it appear that the plane actually hit the Pentagon. Well, guess what? That's not what over 100 people actually saw. I'm not going to believe CIT or Craig McKee. They weren't even there. Craig McKee doesn't even live in the United States. He lives in Canada. I don't care what he has to say. And if you're actually proper and responsible researchers, you would actually interview people who were there on the day itself, at Shanksville, at the Pentagon. No, instead, what does CIT do? Call all the people who actually saw a plane crash at the Pentagon and question their motives, their insiders. But when you're a conspiracy theorist, you don't believe in planes and hijackers, why not? The sky's the limit. Why not just say they don't even exist? In fact, there's actually one other guy who actually don't even believe that there were jumpers or anyone who died in the World Trade Center. His name is Brian Staveley from Let's Roll Forums. One of the most whack job groups of people you'll ever meet. Just ridiculous bunch of people. And that's Steve Diak, Simon Shack. These are people who are basically either doing this to purposely muddy the waters for nefarious reasons, or just basically doing this because they themselves lack the prerequisite to conduct proper research, honest research. They're looking to blame anybody based upon preconceived prejudicial notions, whether it be religious, political, geopolitical. And we have a large contingent of people in the truth movement who basically love to blame Israel at every stop. And with 9/11, there's a decent amount of people who want to blame them. I mean, I think it's a damn shame to want to go this route. Yeah, I have no love lost for the Likud party. That's the Zionist nationalist electoral college of the Knesset, which is basically the congressional district of Israel, the parliament in British, where the competing parties. But the Likud is the major party. And yes, they're criminals. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. He's a human rights criminal. He should be at The Hague. He's not alone. Saudi Arabia, who's the largest criminals next to the United States anyway, the only monarchy in the world led by an ideology that created the hijackers in the first place, Wahhabi Islam. And yet these people blame Israel, basically say that Saudi Arabia is a bunch of patsies. They're not involved. Now we have direct evidence of their complicity and foreknowledge. And from there, we could basically, if we get to them, we could basically get to the United States and Israel. If we can get one, they're basically going to fall in the other. That's how you do it with investigative work. If you have 3 people who are involved with a crime, you put them all in separate rooms and you try to get one to crack. But if you're going to have 3 detectives who basically say that, we'll believe these guys because we don't think these guys are basically guilty, they're patsies because we believe in another set of 3 criminals and they're basically not connected to the crime because we're irrational. That's basically what the truth movement's doing. Now, not to just pick on them, but we have debunkers too, and a good percentage of them basically stick to the 19 hijacker official narrative, which we know was false. There were more than 19. The operation was going to be much bigger. And this was covered up by the FBI. September 13th and 14th. In fact, the only person I know that covers this, besides myself, and he does it a lot more prolific than me, is DJ Thermal Detonator. I'm not going to ruin it, but he's basically come out with a film that basically gets into this subject in full detail. Like I said, I'm not going to ruin it. But go to his channel. He basically has news reports regarding 9/13, 9/14. Arrested a dragnet of over 150 to 200 people. I think myself and DJ Thermal Detonator are the only ones that cover United Airlines Flight 23, which was another plane that was going to be hijacked. It was the 5th plane. I previously did a video on that. Go watch that. We'll find out more about it. So what I'm trying to tell you, and I'm hoping I'm reaching people within the truth movement. I mean, we are in one big truth movement, but we're fractured. The movement itself has different competing groups within the movement that are fighting one another because they don't agree with one another, and they're basically not moving at all. In fact, one can make the argument they're going slowly backwards. Now, I've had my complaints about 9/11 Truth Action Project, who have board members who don't even believe kids died at Sandy Hook. They don't believe in hijackers and hijacked planes. Don't call yourself a truther if you're going to espouse ridiculous, nonsensical conspiracies that are based on your imagination. Barbara Honegger is a board member on the Lawyers Committee for 9/11. Why is she a board member? Kick her out. You people in the Truth Movement have to make the decision of carrying this luggage with you or making the right decisions and kicking these people out who are basically holding you back. And we're coming up in just a couple of weeks on the 20th anniversary of September 11th, 2001. What are we going to do for the 20th anniversary? Are we going to step it up? Because Truth Action Project, at least under Michael Santangelo, who's doing, he's won me over. I really like this guy. And there's very few people I do like. Sandy Hicks is another I like. Morgan Nolan. These are basically people who are trying to save what's left of the Truth Movement. But they're fighting an uphill battle. And I'm not going to support anyone who espouses conspiracy. I'm sorry. I can't support 9/11 Lawyers Committee. If you're going to have Barbara Honegger, who doesn't even believe these planes were hijacked, or that Flight 77 never took off out of Dulles, or Flight 93 never took out of Newark, or 175 and 11 never took out of New York, why would you have her as a board member? Is it because she brings weight with her name? Well, then you're doing this wrong. You're doing it for ratings. I'm sorry, that's not the way to go with it. Get her out. Craig McKee is actually a writer for architects and engineers. Kick him out. Kelly David, I think, is a treasurer for architects and engineers. Kick her out. Kick these people out. They don't believe in hijackers. They don't believe in hijacked planes or phone calls. These people have this much, see that little space between my fingers? That much knowledge regarding that in which they claim to invest their time in, 9/11. They probably couldn't tell you most of the hijackers' names if you asked them. They are holding you back. And this message goes to David Meesweekle of the Lawyers Committee, Richard Gage of Architects and Engineers, and Bill Jacoby of Truth Action Project. In fact, I don't think Bill Jacoby even acknowledges my existence anymore. I think he's blocked me on Twitter. I don't know why. Richard Gage probably doesn't even know I exist, but then again, I don't talk about physics. And Dave Meesweekle doesn't really like me that much, because I call out these people. Because, excuse me, because I take 9/11 deadly serious. It's been something that I invested 12, now 13 years of my time, especially in the last 10 years. I've studied the geopolitical aspect of 9/11. I don't offer my opinion much at all. I don't speculate, hardly, less than 2% of the time. I post only from primary sources when I can. And I'm meticulous and careful. I like to think that I am. I don't have a very big channel, but I'd like to keep it that way because I really don't want followers. That's another video I made about where the True Movement should go. There shouldn't be followers. There should be leaders. And I'm hoping my goal is to have people that watch my channel learn from my channel, and then they make their own channel and they become teachers. That's what I want. That's the whole genesis of my channel. My written work, my videos. That's what I want. But for people like Bollyn, people like Roth, Alex Jones, CIT, they're irrelevant. I won't even name them. They want money. They make a living off this. They've written books. They do videos, small libraries and garages. To them, it's a money-making scheme. Some people want fame. Craig McKee, Barbara Honecker, dying to become relevant. I think even Loose Change is basically just trying to slowly detach from their film because that's what haunts them. But I mean, you basically, with your conspiracy theories, and why I made this video is to show you that if any of the people I named in this video watch this video, you have set back the truth movement years. And what you've done for the future is damage the reputations of people who have yet to even start a new investigation or try to get a movement to start a new one. You're not going to get a new investigation now. You got the wrong people in your agencies and in your groups. And I don't short talk about this. I'm straight out regarding this. I'm very serious. If you want to be taken seriously, you got to get rid of these people. I mean, get rid of them. And yeah, you'll have some backlash, but who gives a damn? Who cares how many followers you lose? Who cares how much profit you lose? Who cares if your reputation gets damaged, which you did to David Chandler and Wayne Costi, by the way, because of these cultish antics by Craig McKee and Barbara Honecker and CIT who tried to damage the reputation of these good people. The only thing that matters is the truth. And if that doesn't matter, or if that comes second, what are you doing in the truth movement?